Hi, Ben here from Supercoach Insider, giving you a little Supercoach summary for the Brisbane vs Collingwood game. It's a long weekend. This is something a little different, so if you do like it, please do shout out, let us know, like, subscribe. And the idea is this weekend, particularly a good weekend to start with, giving you some of the insight on observations from the game. Now, I was there. Chris didn't because he was sick, so I did say, Chris just didn't want to watch his team lose, and I was right. So shout out to Chris, and look, every mate needs a loser. So props to the Brisbane Lions this week. Now, the first thing I have to say is Dacos. Chris was absolutely tooting his own horn, made Dacos VC. So if you are one of those Dacos VC owners, send a comment out there as well. I regret that. If you didn't start him as well, please do shout out and let know that you didn't start Dacos and you hate your life right now. Is also an option as well. So look, he killed it. Quarter two, there was trying to think of who it was on Twitter actually said some observations on how Brisbane negated Collingwood, particularly Dacos, but he just killed it. And anytime there was a kick out, he pretty much went all the way back into defense and was like, no, that's my ball. He would kick it to someone and then leg it past them and then get a handball receive and then kick it outside D50 as well. So he got a free kick in and then got a handball receive and then actually kicked it out of defensive 50 to someone else with great efficiency. It's just absolutely ridiculous. So I can't even describe how good he played. And the only thing was is that second quarter, they did definitely get negated, which was the only thing that probably saved them, to be honest. Now, the guy's name was Jack, and he actually had a pretty good observation from it. And there's a couple of things I'll go through quickly, and I'll try and keep these nice and short. But pretty much that second quarter, no defensive tag. So Jack on Twitter here, so JJM Voice, pretty much saying no hard tag. But when they had the ball and ran through it, Brisbane actually had someone run sort of in the passing lane of Dacos, 5 to 10 metres from him to kind of cut off the angle for a handball or a kick and try and get in his way so that they couldn't go through him. Now, once Brisbane got a head start, they didn't care. There was no defensive pressure. They were 5 goals up, so they pretty much didn't pay any attention. And straight from the beginning of the game, I nearly tried to change my VC to him because he goes up into the forward line, into defense, and McCarthy just pats him on the back. That was it. No, I was watching it going, hey, is anyone going to give him a hard time or anyone going to put pressure on him? No, just a light tap on the back saying, hey, mate, and that was it. That's literally the only attention that they gave him. He could have gone so much more. I was hexing, I was cursing. Every time he kicked it inside that forward 50, it was ridiculous. And I think understated as far as him as a player. He had 38 disposals, 38 disposals and absolutely just killed it. So 18 kicks, 20 handballs, a good amount of contested, 2 goals too. And the thing that I noticed even more is that when Collingwood needed the scores and they needed someone to actually help them impact the scoreboard or deliver forward of centre, they actually went Dacos and got him out of defence, played him in that midfield and then played midfield and pushing forward. So he hit the scoreboard himself and he was then delivering into 50 or actually creating those chains, which I thought was very interesting because even in games where you think he might be quiet, if Collingwood's losing or they're not getting involved in defence as much, then they'll just move him up to where the action is so that way he can still score. So I found that very fascinating. I think he's an absolute gun of a player. So that kind of just gives him even more, I guess, credibility or credence going as a VC option for me instead of going out of games a little bit. So he, absolutely towed it up. Those 2 goals too. The 2 that he missed were super easy as well. Outside of him taking a flop, which I know the hands were in the back, but he definitely took a dive. So I think he would have his time again if he did that. But I think absolutely underrated. Ashcroft as well was definitely one. Had the most touches for the Lions, which I thought was incredibly good on him. Super slow the first half. Came back in with a lot of touches in the second. And he came back with I think it was, where's his Supercoach? So Ashcroft 75 Supercoach. So look, not too bad. I'll take that considering the slow first half he had. Lions got absolutely smashed in that. And McCluggage, so bad. Like, I cannot even describe. He just stopped running. And I don't know if he's getting gassed or he's unfit. But so many times he just gave up, didn't put pressure on, or just got beaten one-on-one and then just kind of gave up and watched someone run. So he was the only one I was probably really abusing from the Lions. And the Lions just butchered it. Hey, they just kicked the ball, rushed forward with no composure, no systematic sort of processes in place. They would just boot it. And sometimes they get lucky with the contest. Other times they just boot it and go, oh, hey, like Ash Johnson just intercept mark, more intercept mark. And they just boot it. Whereas I really liked Collingwood's game for the most part in the structure and organise in the link-up handballs and overlapping stuff where they actually look really dangerous forward of centre. Where it was one, though, I think Lions pressured them early in that, so in Collingwood's defensive sort of half. Sort of like with the Bulldogs previously when you knew they were trying to handball and link up, that you had to pressure them early because once they got outside you, they were just unstoppable. So that's, I think, where the Lions sort of came into it. And it was pretty much then flipped between, so Collingwood not kicking straight and then the Lions having a few of those sort of, once the ball went in quickly, a little bit of chaos. And then you had, Charlie Cameron linking up there. Rayner, I thought, was very influential. So finally showed some good stuff there. Actually had text come through saying, Rayner's playing like a guy that doesn't want to go back into D50, which I thought was quite funny. But he did really well. Charlie Cameron, I think, was also there. Definitely the difference there. So that was the difference in the game. Some of the quick entry, which didn't always look that pretty. And then Charlie Cameron just kind of using that opportunity and then Collingwood missing theirs. But in general play, I thought Collingwood actually looked more dangerous for the better part. And there was a couple of things I noticed with their structures, which I thought was very, very worthwhile. Now, one of them, which is probably why it impressed me a little bit. So when you have a mark and you've got that gap between sort of like your 50-meter kick and then there's that gap in the middle, any of the Collingwood players that were actually standing there were kind of telling the person back, like pointing, like push back. They would actually run back out of that space. And then you had a small sort of like a Bobby Hill or someone or other putting just a small enough little block on, kind of like a Port Adelaide-esque, and I know it happens everywhere, but good enough to just get a little block on, get their teammate a little half a meter. And so pretty much one guy gets out of the space, a small little block on, and then leads through. And it probably helps when Harris Andrews doesn't really give them much credibility, I think, because time someone was leading outside that forward 50, Harris Andrews pretty much got beaten most times. So I thought that was really good. And the other thing I think was that Collingwood did really well is that, and I think they're going to smash Hawthorne when they play them, because whenever the switch went backwards first and the Lions were looking to sort of switch out the other side, Collingwood pretty much streamlined and pushed all across the field, but every single Collingwood player was actually on the far side of their opponent. So what would happen is when the Lions actually had the ball and everyone's running across, it was Collingwood first and then the Lions player trailing behind them. And that's how they pretty much pushed across. So there's no space to kind of lead into really because Collingwood's already ahead of their opponent by a meter or two running to cut off that space. So then what happens is Brisbane then have to try and come inboard, but then the other Collingwood players are also slightly inside their players. So it makes it a little bit more complicated for the Lions there. So I thought they did that really well. On the flip side though, is once it was more stationary and it wasn't a switch, then Collingwood were actually on the inside of their player, which then helps them once they have the ball and they win the ball, they can actually break and move inside quicker. So I thought their structure up was really impressive as far as, being able to cut off the switch and get outside boundary side on that. So that way they could actually cover the space more. And then flip side is actually have that inside track. So, and stupid Lions actually go, I'll just kick it to the boundary line because that was their strategy all night to negate Collingwood's ruck. And they pretty much tried to slow it down and kick long down the line when in doubt to try and get more stoppages. And that's pretty much where it was. The boundary line in Brisbane, it's so frustrating. I don't know if you've ever seen, but they have this little like 99 sign they hold up. They held it up against the Ds, pretty much saying, hey, let's take the tempo out of the game. Let's play slow. Let's chip the ball around. And then teams will actually try and come back in and try and, gives them chance and get momentum. So Brisbane playing slow isn't really great for them outside of buying some time where the opposition, might not be able to score as many if you play fast footy. But each time they've looked horrible. So D's that happened, they try to go, let's take the pace out, 99 sign, let's take the pace out. And then what happened is once it got within about 5 goals, they started to panic and go, we now need to change gears. And then D's kicked another couple, dangerous. Collingwood, same thing. They put this 99 sign up and they started to try and play slow and that just went into Collingwood's hands. So instead of having like a 40-odd point lead, that started to get dwindled back into like your 30s and Collingwood started to try and get things moving. And I think we're probably lucky they didn't kick straight because it should have been a lot closer than it was. So that was pretty much where I think the game was won and lost. Collingwood, I definitely gave a lot of credit for, and I thought they were very impressive for the better part of that game. And I really hate to say it, but I actually quite like watching Collingwood play. Dacos, freak. Like any keeper league, pay whatever you have to get him because he's absolutely a jet. Glad I brought him in. I just regret starting him instead of Ridley, which would have been nice if I did it the other way around. But look, it is what it is. Now, the other thing of worth note is talking about Dunkley and Neil. So I thought the midfielders, we won the clearances, but Brisbane, they got beaten up, a lot of it around the ground. And Chris spoke earlier on saying like, well, Brisbane aren't a huge possession team. And they were hoping with Dunkley coming in, because Dunkley's main goal, his go-to is that link-up sort of handball receive, lead-up mark, and then actually getting his hands on the pill more. Whereas Brisbane still weren't really possessing the ball heaps, and we just sort of kicked it long, even though we could have linked up so many times. I think once it was like a 4-on-1, and we just kicked it to a 1-on-1 and forward 50 instead of actually running it in and trying to use that speed and overlap. They're just, panicked kind of stupid play in parts. So Dunkley and Neil, I think, are hampering each other a little bit. So originally we thought, hey, maybe Dunkley coming in, they can increase possessions because they weren't a high possession team. So maybe there was room for both to do really well. But what I'm kind of seeing is that, one of them will kind of win the clearance and maybe get the handball and kick the ball out. So there's points in that element. But around the ground, the Lions aren't trying to overpossess it. They're not getting their hands in them as much. And then if anything, Dunkley's now a better lead-up version on a 45-degree angle than Neil is, which was probably one of the concerns we had going in, because Neil used to like to get, the cheap one coming out of D50 or around the ground. He'd just kind of like push back, lead on a 45 and get a little cheapy. But the difference is Dunkley does the exact same thing, except he's taller. He's like 190 centimeters or something, right? So he's taller. So he's the better option to do that. And they just didn't look so clean with it. So look, I think there's definitely still room for him. I mean, Neil got 102 Supercoach. Dunkley was very unimpressive with an 84, but did do well in the second half. So I think there's definitely a little bit of scope for there. Dunkley, everyone should have anyway. Lockie Neal, I'm probably looking at after the bye when they play a lot of home games in the run home. So maybe they'll just beat up on a few sides, and he probably should spike a few good scores later in the year. He's just had a bit of a slower start than usual. So he's still someone I'm watching as far as value. I know a couple of you got off him already, so kudos to you if you had, because, Clary instead of Neil is a no-brainer for those that jumped on. McKenna is another one, 86 Supercoach. I'm not sure, it wasn't spoken about. I watched a bit of the replay as well, but he put a hit on Bobby Hill. Now, don't know if it was an elbow or it was like a gut punch or whatever it was, but he went down like a sack of potatoes. He went down like he weighed about 40 kilos, and I kind of ripped into him as well, taking a bit of a dive later on, and not obviously when he got hit, I wouldn't call that a dive, but definitely a little, I guess those small forwards, a little antagonist. They kind of just provoke you and get under your skin a little bit. So, so really happy with McKenna's scoring. I don't know what he was thinking about not playing on from a kick in. Like, I saw a few tweets on Twitter saying, kick in, mate, like to play on, get your free stat. But I thought for the better part, McKenna was pretty good as far as trying to link up and move forward. I'm not sure how I rate him as a defensive pressure so much, but that's an interesting one. Wilmot, I thought, was underrated. He should have done a lot better than a 50. Now, some people are toying up whether they take the 50 or whether they go with a Cowan. So for those of you looking for this afternoon, I'm thinking of rolling the dice, and it's 50-50. A few games in, maybe he's more comfortable now playing North Melbourne, where maybe it'll rebound a little quicker. I think there's scope for him, but generally you could probably try and bank the points because who knows. But I'm probably going to roll the dice on that one. So let me know what you're thinking as far as that's there. Outside of that, I mean, there's no real other Supercoach relevancy from that. So I think that's pretty much it. Gunston, I thought, was very unimpressive. Coleman, if you got him in, only 49 Supercoach, so you'd be very upset for those that kind of even held him, which I didn't think he was a great Supercoach option to begin with. DeGoey only a 107, kicked 1 goal, 1. So I told you previously he's not a top 10 midfielder, so don't even go there. Looks dangerous, looks damaging, but you're going to see that fluctuations like Dangerfield used to, except not a good enough version of Dangerfield in my eyes for DeGoey. High impact kind of player, relies on goals as well as those clearances and 4 to 50 sort of entries in order to score really well. So you'll probably see him going from 80s, 90s, and then some 120, 130 games. But I don't think he's going to have as many 130 games as he needs to, because you'll just get the 100, 100, 100, 90, and that'll just bring down your average to 110 or less, which isn't good enough in my opinion. So, and I think that's about it. So let me know what you think. I'm not going to go on about Jack Crisp, but he did cop a few little boos here, mainly. I don't know if it was from the news or because he was a former Lion, but look, I wish him all the best in whatever comes out in the next week. So it's hard for me to comment because obviously you can't condone some things, but it'll be interesting to sort of see what comes out in the wash for that part. So look, that's it. Let me know what you thought of the game. Let me know what you think of the Brisbane team and the Collingwood team moving forward. And we'll talk to you next time. Let me know if you want more of this stuff as well on the games. Nice, short, sharp segments talking about the summary of Supercoach. And that's it from now. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.